Hello, my name is Professor Thomas Hale. I am the course director for the Master of Public Policy program here at the Blavatnik School of Government. Thank you so much for joining us for this question and answer session on the admissions process to the MPP program. We are really excited to have you with us today. I'm going to pass you over in a moment to the fantastic admissions team who are going to answer all the questions you might have. But before I do, I just want to say a few words about what makes the Blavatnik School MPP such a special degree. Of course, there are lots of good MPP programs or similar programs in the world, but what's really distinctive about us is three things. First, it's a program that has purpose at its core. Our motto as a school is a world better led, better served, and better governed. And that mission really infuses everything we do, our research, our engagement with policymakers, and at our heart, the design of the Master in Public Policy program. It's a degree about making the world a better place to live. Secondly, the Blavatnik School is a very global place. And by global, I don't mean floating up in some satellite looking down on the Earth from an ivory tower. I mean a place that's truly deeply embedded in the concerns and the contexts of people all over the world. And that's important not just because we want to be a place where the world is represented, but actually because we think everyone can learn a huge amount by looking at the experiences of their neighbors and countries far from their shores. So it's about learning through our diversity. Finally, the Blavatnik School is a place where purpose and a global experience come together with academic rigor and a firm commitment to practice. So it's not about trying to find what the most cutting-edge theory is for the sake of the cutting-edge theory. It's about using that cutting-edge theory to make a real difference in the world by marrying it in a very practical way to experience on the ground. By combining practitioners who are embedded deep in policymaking processes with cutting-edge academic research, we think we can deliver on the purpose that's at our core. So thank you so much for joining us today. We're looking forward to answering all your questions, and we hope you will think about us as a home for you in the future.
Hello and welcome to the MPP Admissions Q&A. We're so happy that you made time in your schedules to join us today. We have about an hour to answer all your questions, or as many as we can as possible. Thank you so much for submitting some in advance. That was wonderful. Please put questions in the Q&A function, and I think people are already doing that, which is wonderful. My name is Helen. I oversee the comms and events here at the school. I am going to introduce you to my colleagues, and then we will get cracking with some of your questions. Richenda.
Hello everyone, I'm Richenda Gambles, Director of Admissions at the school, and just a huge welcome to today's event.
Hi, I'm Beatrice, I'm the Admissions Officer at the school.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephanie, I'm the Admissions Assistant here at the school.
So we'll get started. You all heard Professor Hale's video there, which hopefully will give you a slight taste of what the MPP is all about. But Richenda, what does a typical candidate look like for the MPP? And can you talk about some of the kinds of students that we've had here at the school?
So we're often asked what we think is a typical candidate, and the answer is we really do not have any typical candidate. So I think as one of the things that Tom drew out in his brilliant introduction to today's session is the global nature of our classroom and of the concerns that we focus on here at the school. And of course, we have the global element embedded through the curriculum and the focus of the programme. But really at the heart, it's about the student body. And this year we have 146 students with us from 60 different countries. So you can imagine just how many of those concerns and agendas and interests from all over the world are brought to bear in the classroom. And so the typical MPP candidate, well, there is no typical in terms of nationality. There's also no typical in terms of age or experience. So we welcome people who are aged between 21 all the way through to 45 and beyond. We welcome people with all sorts of different kinds of policy interests and different types and levels of experience. And I think that diversity makes for such rich discussions within our classroom all throughout the year. Of course, the charge can be made, are you too diverse? And to that, we would just say there is something that definitely does unite the students, and that perhaps is what you can get at when you talk about the typical student. And that is that our students are, all of them, they are selected because they are absolutely committed to public service, to wanting to make a difference in respect to the policy area or focus that they're interested in, and also that they have proven that they are the sort of people that can and will make a difference in that space. So in terms of the typical student, it's someone who massively has public service at the core and who is someone who is a change maker.
That's a pretty good summary of all the wonderful people we've seen through our doors over the last 10 years, 11 years, I think now. Beatrice, how should somebody, when they're thinking about applying, how should they prepare for the application process? Because it's hopefully not too onerous, but there are certain steps that you have to go through.
I mean, it might sound obvious, but the main biggest piece of advice is to read the guidance. Everything is on the university course website, all of the information that you need in terms of what the course is and what the entry requirements are, but also all of the information on the required documents that you need to submit. So make sure to read that carefully. If you do have any questions, you can get in touch with us, but everything's on the website. Smaller bits of advice: contact your referees early. You want to make sure that they have time to actually write and submit their reference before the deadline. So it's good to give them a heads up and let them know that you want them to submit a reference for you, and submit early. The deadline's obviously quite early in January, I think the 5th of January. And you can submit up to that day, but we'd really encourage you to submit earlier, ideally before Christmas. That just gives us enough time to look at all of the applications, and then we can get in touch with you if there's any issues with your file. Other than that, I think, show us who you are and why you think you'd be an invaluable asset to the MPP, really.
Thank you. We all make mistakes. What kind of common mistakes might one see on an application, Stephanie?
Yeah, so there's two areas where we often see mistakes. The first one is in the written work. As Beatrice said, this is really easily answered by just reading the guidance. It is all on the website. But yes, there have been a couple of changes, so make sure to read this thoroughly before you submit. I think also people often submit the wrong document. They might submit a draft or just completely the wrong document. So do be careful when you submit your written work. And the other area is your references. So sometimes we'll get 3 professional references come through, and actually it is a firm requirement that we have an academic reference. And if you've done a master's, then this should be from your supervisor or the course director.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And some of the questions are coming in about the personal statement and the reflective essay that applicants have to submit. Richenda, what are we looking for in these 2 particular items that we're asking applicants to put in?
So I think with the statement of purpose, I wrote a sort of like a mini piece that's actually on our website about what we're looking for in this, but we changed it for this year because we want to help you. What we want to do is make sure that from your statement of purpose, we've got a really clear sense of why you want to do the MPP, why you feel it's critical for your next steps in public service, and how you think it fits into the sort of the career trajectory that you're already on and in terms of where you want to go. And so we've asked some very specific questions around that as prompts to make sure that people are definitely telling us that information in the personal statement. We also ask questions about the impact that you've had in the various activities that you have been participating in so far, and some of your leadership experiences, not because we want a list of what you've done, but because we want to see you highlight some of the leadership positions that you have had and to see how you reflect on your experiences so far and what you've learned from that with the idea of kind of moving forward. So that's the sort of, as I said, the prompts are on the website, and we have changed the statement of purpose, the requirements for it, because we want to help you, and we want to help you focus on the things that we're looking for. The other piece of work is one of the other pieces of work is the reflective policy essay. Again, this has been changed this year we hope, in ways that help you. So in the past, it was a more sort of generic and open request to write a sort of a policy essay. And we are asking you in 300 words to set out a sort of a policy that has potentially gone wrong, or a policy that hasn't been implemented particularly well, and to describe to us what that policy is. And then from your own perspective, be it as an engaged citizen, be it as a journalist, be it as a policy practitioner, as an activist, what do you feel has gone wrong with the policy and why? And what do you think could be done to rectify and fix that? And what would be your recommendations moving forward? Of course, the subject matter is completely open to you. And whatever you choose, it's a good indication, of course, to us about the sorts of things that you're interested in. But as I say, we have changed these pieces of work with the purpose of helping you carve out a really strong application that allows you to really show us your interests and to shine.
Perfect, thank you. Are there any particular examples of the kinds of evidence needed? So perhaps what somebody has done in a previous job, or working in the voluntary sector, or certainly working in their society, in their communities?
Yeah. Do you mean sort of evidence to put in the personal statement and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, sort of, so in the personal statement, one of the things that we're looking for is, evidence that of sort of effective, thoughtful, reflective leadership. So we wouldn't want just a list of things that you have done, but actually more a sense of what you have done and the tangible activities that you have taken that have had an impact and that have made a difference. And also your reflections on any of that work that you've done. So we're looking for people who are absolutely focused on activity and applying their knowledge to think about sort of, how can I make a positive difference in the world, which I think speaks to some of the earlier messages that Tom Hale was talking about at the beginning. And so it's evidence of the tangible things that you have actually done, not just the accolades and titles that you can attribute to yourself on your CV.
Perfect, thank you so much. These applications, as I mentioned before, they're not too onerous, but Stephanie, is there any help or support that the admissions team can provide for people when they're filling out their applications?
Yes, definitely. I mean, as we've said before on the website, there's so much information about the documents to submit, also regarding funding and many questions that you'll have before coming to Oxford. But you can always get in touch with us regarding the application process, or if you have any queries about the course that you haven't been able to answer by looking at the website. Unfortunately, we're not able to provide individual feedback or comment on suitability, just to ensure the fairness of the process. But if there are any queries regarding application process or the course itself, do get in touch.
Perfect, thank you so much. We're going to move on to a topic that I think we've had quite a few questions in about, and that's funding. People generally will think that coming to Oxford is, beyond their capability financially, but we are incredibly lucky as a school. This year, we were able to provide 90% funding, full and partial, for our students, which is just fantastic. We want to ensure that finance isn't a barrier to coming to the school. So Beatrice, can you give us a kind of a rough overview of the main sources of funding and how you go about applying for it?
So we don't want funding to be a barrier to people joining us on course. So we do put a huge amount of work into trying to help and support our students and our offer holders to get funding. That being said, not all the funding comes from us. This year, of the 90% that Helen has mentioned have funding on program, about 30% came from university funding, 20% came from funding from the school, and another 40% came from external scholarships. We encourage everyone to look at all of the potential opportunities out there. Talking about university funding specifically, just by submitting your application within the deadline, you will be automatically considered for all of the university scholarships. And the university offers hundreds, if not thousands, I think, of scholarships for graduate students. They have different eligibility criteria, but as I say, for almost all of them, you'll be automatically considered. One to point out that you do have to submit an additional statement for is Weidenfeld-Hoffmann. And we do often get quite a few students on this scholarship. I think this year we've got 7, so that's one worth looking into, as it does require extra steps. Otherwise, the university and the school ones you will be considered automatically for. In terms of external scholarships, you do get a huge range of different sources. So a lot of people come with funding from their governments, a lot of people come with funding from their employers, but also just loads of other kinds. So things like even crowdfunding we've had in the past. Just explore every avenue, put yourself out there and see what's available. But just one worth pointing out in terms of external scholarships is Chevening. The deadline for Chevening to apply is in November. We do also tend to get quite a few students on Chevening scholarships. I think this year we've got about 9. So definitely also worth looking at that. We do put a lot of work into supporting our offer holders to get funding, but I think you should always be taking the lead and looking at every possible opportunity, but we're always here to help support you in that process.
Thank you so much. We're going to talk about the MSc now. We also, you may know if you've looked at our website, offer an MSc in Public Policy Research. Do you want to, Richenda, just give us an idea about how does that work? And does somebody apply for it at the same time as they're applying for the MPP?
Yeah, so our MSc has now been running, we're now in our 2nd year of students in the building. It's a really exciting programme that is designed to be really a follow-on degree from the Master of Public Policy. So whereas the Master of Public Policy is this incredible opportunity to get a really strong and broad sense of what constitutes public policy analysis and to learn hugely from a very diverse, quite large sort of class of around about 140 students. The MSc gives people the opportunity to deep dive into a policy that really interests them, that they have sort of, thought a lot about through the MPP and want to just now really focus in and really take that one to the next level. And you get on the MSc the opportunity to have research methods training, which is really helpful as you think about the thesis. So it's a much more sort of academic sort of programme, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't retain the school's sort of, raison d'etre of being applied and absolutely focused on real world policy issues. It's a really brilliant course. The students that did it last year spoke so warmly of it, and I know already from conversations that our new class feel very excited about it too. Now we offer it in 2 different ways. You can apply as a standalone sort of course, and that's something that often maybe our alumni or our current students might like to think about doing. But for new students who are brand new to the school and who are just putting in an application now, we have the 1+1 programme. And that is the opportunity to apply for both the MPP and the MSc at the same time. And this is a path that's brilliant for people who have perhaps 2 years funding already. So, some people come with 2-year government scholarships, some people come with university scholarships that have 2 years. And so for people who think they're likely to get 2 years funding, it's just, do think seriously about the 1+1 programme. If funding is a concern and you think that you don't have access for the 2 years or you're worried about it, you can perhaps apply for the MPP at this point and then later down the line the MSc. And I say that because the way that the university funding works is you will only be considered for university scholarships in your year of acceptance. So it's a funny kind of quirk, but the MSc can, of course, be applied for together with the MPP on the 1+1. And any questions about that, we know it's a slightly more complicated thing. Myself and the team would be only too happy to ask any, address any.
And there is lots of information on the website. I hope you find it useful, and certainly, give us feedback about the information that you're seeing on the website, because if there's anything we can do to improve that, we're always looking to make our information much more accessible. So do have a look at the MSc. There's lots of information about that on the website too, if you have any other questions on that. Going back to the MPP, Beatrice, can you give us a kind of an overview or an understanding of what an average day might look like for an MPP student?
Yeah, definitely. So I think maybe not the most helpful answer, but I don't think there's an average day. I think each day will vary hugely. That's both day to day, but also particularly term to term. You will usually, though, have a mix between contact hours, so teaching hours, and then independent work hours, where you're expected to be working towards the program, but not with one-on-one teaching. So that'll be a mix of lectures, seminars, and case studies. And then you'll have independent reading, group work. Usually you'll have about 1 to 3 kind of teaching sessions a day, and then you'll be expected to, before and after, do reading for each of those. On top of that, then there's loads of events at the school that happen and that you're more than encouraged to attend. And yeah, just loads always going on, really. It does change from term to term. So in your first 2 terms, you have a bit more of kind of compulsory modules, whereas in the later terms, you have more optional modules. And yeah, I think that should roughly cover it.
There's a lot going on. It's certainly it's a busy year, that's for sure. And just to give you an idea, Stephanie, I wonder if you can talk about the kind of workload. I mean, it is kind of it's busy, as you say. There's lots of events going on as well in the school, and students are encouraged to get involved with those, and also with your colleges. There's lots going on in Oxford as well. But what kind of workload can an MPP student expect, and what kind of support can they get from tutors or group discussions, things like that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, as Beatrice said, it does vary from term to term, week to week. So we can't give an exact number of hours, but in a week you can expect to have about 20 hours maybe of lectures, and then in total on the MPP course spend 40 to 50 hours in a week working on it. In terms of support, there's a vast network of support here at the school, but also in the college and the university overall. Every MPP student does have a supervisor, so there's someone you can go to. Also, you've got the rest of the cohort, which is a fantastic support network. But as I said, in college, there's a lot of pastoral support, and we have our own welfare team here at the university that you can contact as well if you need to. So plenty of support and plenty of work.
Plenty of work for sure. And somebody did actually ask, Oladapu asked, what is the student to faculty ratio? I'm not sure what that is. We have
Do the maths.
Yeah, 150 students.
Yeah. I think in terms of in the teaching, it depends. So there'll be
Yes.
some lectures where all of the cohort is. So there'll
Exactly.
be about 100 this year, 146 students. But then the seminars are designed to complement the teaching. And I think usually the groups there are about 15 max, I wouldn't say. So it kind of changes depending on what
Yeah.
teaching it is, but I'd say somewhere around there.
And having a supervisor, as Stephanie mentioned, does mean that students do get personalised attention, and each student has their own supervisor. How are they chosen, Richenda?
So we work closely with the course directors each year to really think about the incoming students and what particular interests people have, and in as far as possible we simply match them to faculty who are interested and focused on the issues that the particular students care about. But you know, I know supervision has been mentioned, and it's a really wonderful thing that we have at the school. And you know, I am a supervisor for a number of students myself, and it's just an opportunity to really sort of carve out some time, just one-on-one, where you have someone who takes a real interest in the sort of, you know, the focus that you have, really is there to just make sure that you're applying and reflecting and learning on and taking everything that the MPP can give you, and just is there to support, guide and give mentorship. And it's, you know, you would typically meet with your supervisor, say 2 times a term, but you can meet more, and there are times when you perhaps need to meet a few times more.
So hopefully that's reassuring that there is a lot of support and guidance throughout the year while you're here from a number of different sources. We've had quite a few questions about academic scores for the application, and we'll try and kind of summarise that. But my other factors hold equal
Mm.
importance alongside academic scores when somebody is applying?
Do you want me to take that one?
Yes, sorry, Richard, yes,
Um,
please.
Yeah, so when we're looking at potential candidates to come on the programme, of course we look at sort of, you know, your academic record. We look at sort of, you know, the institutions that you've come from, the journey that you've been on, the trajectory that you've shown. We look at sort of, you know, end scores. We look at references. We look at the quality of the written work that you've submitted, and all of that forms a sort of, you know, a way in which we can kind of like arrive at a sort of verdict on academic and analytical ability. So it's not just one thing, it's a number of things that help us with that. And then but then of course we are also looking as much as at that as we are at commitment to public service and leadership and impact potential. And we're looking at, you know, sort of, you know, what you say in your personal statement, what you include on your CV, again thinking about the written work, the topics that you select, but also what references sort of say to those sort of areas. So, you know, you absolutely need to be able to demonstrate academic and analytical ability, but an MPP student brings so much more than that. And it's that sort of vision, purpose, drive, going back again to what Tom was saying at the beginning of just wanting to make a positive change in the world, and the evidence that you're the sort of person that is on a path to do that.
Perfect. We've had a few questions about English language requirements. Beatrice, I'm not sure whether that's one that you could take. Is there a particular English language requirement for the MPP?
Yeah. So you do have to meet the university's English language requirement. The university on their website, they do have a standard and a higher English level requirement, and we require the higher level. So you need to have either studied in the UK recently at higher education level for, I think, at least 3 years within the last 2 years, or you need to take a IELTS or TOEFL test and achieve a certain score. I won't try to remember what the exact scores are. I'd recommend to just look at the website because everything's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so unless you are native, national and resident in UKVI countries, you will need to meet the English language requirements, either through previous study or through an English language test. I think that's correct.
Yes, I might just add to that the waiver requirements on the university's website are slightly different to our own department. So unfortunately ours are stricter. So I know on there it mentions professional experience, and I think only 9 months studying. Unfortunately, that's not our requirements. So if you have any questions about that, do feel free to get in touch.
Thank you very much for that. Hopefully that answers quite a few questions from people who are with us today. One question here is it possible for students to choose topics to study throughout the course, Beatrice? Is that one you could answer?
Yeah, I think I touched on it briefly earlier, but essentially the MPP program, it does have some compulsory modules, which are especially in the first 2 terms of the year, but you do also have a number of optional modules you can take. There is applied policy modules that you'll have to pick, and those can happen kind of year round. And they're on things such as communications, negotiations, there's also statistics, behavioral science, just to give a couple examples. And then there's also optional modules that you'll do in your 3rd term of the year. These change every year, so we can't promise what will be available, but some examples from recent years include topics on things like environment, conflict and security, digital policy, healthcare as well. And then, of course, the summer project comes up, which is hugely individualized and personalizable, because each student will get to pick their own summer project, essentially. So there's definitely options to kind of pick the areas that you're most interested in.
Can I just add to that, because actually, sort of, you know, as well as everything that Beatrice has brilliantly set out, a new innovation that's come in this year is the introduction of clusters. And so this is this really exciting new development where, as well as following the entire typical Master of Public Policy curriculum and having the opportunity to do options in the summer project, we're also giving people the opportunity to join one of 3 clusters. This year it's sustainability, which has a focus on climate change, digital tech, it's pretty obvious what the focus of that one is, and social policy, so thinking education, health, housing, more of the sort of, the social welfare sort of issues of concern to people. And so we have these 3 clusters, and those are additional to the main curriculum, and they're sort of, regular kind of meets with students, but also faculty and research staff at the school. So it's a really nice way of kind of connecting with people throughout the school on topics that you're really passionate and focused on. And they can be sort of events with guest speakers, they can be sort of, book reviews, just whatever the group decides to bring to the table.
And that will also include, as I understand it, our alumni who are going to be able to get involved. And is it worth saying a few words about the community? Because when you come to the school for your year, it doesn't end at the end of that year. You become part of the Blavatnik School alumni community, and we have over 1,000 alumni now across the world who have their own networks. They have groups, industry groups, all coming together to discuss, say, we have alumni who are working in the climate field. They all get together regularly to discuss innovations, to help each other and support each other. So you'd be joining that community, which is a community for life. Is there anything more you want to say about that, about the alumni that we have?
Well, I think you've summarised brilliantly sort of, what makes our alumni so incredible. Just, I mean, once you join the school as a Master of Public Policy student, you become a member of our community, not just for that year, but as Helen says, for life. And what is amazing to see, it happens all the time, is the sort of first up, the friendships and the connections that you form with your own students during your MPP year. And as you sort of, as you go through that year, you become familiar with, you get introduced to the alumni network. And then, of course, sort of when you leave the school, graduate from the programme, you automatically join our alumni community. And it's recently we brought so many of our alumni back together to celebrate our 10-year anniversary. At the time, I think we had about 900 alumni, and 600 plus joined the school back in Oxford, which was incredible. And, that's obviously a sort of, a particularly kind of high level example of the engagement. But we have alumni, regular alumni meetups around the world. We have events, some of our faculty, when they're traveling, they'll meet up with people, and but much more importantly, it's just the connections that you make within the alumni community. And if you think we're admitting people who are kind of these change makers, who are absolutely focused on, doing these incredible things in the world, just imagine sort of, just imagine who you have in this network, and it's a wonderful thing.
It is, it's fantastic. And if you happen to look at or please follow us on Instagram, Blavatnik School, you'll see it's a real community platform, and we really celebrate a lot of the achievements that our alumni have over the years. And obviously we have current students have been doing Instagram takeovers as well, so you get an idea of what it's like for them in their first couple of weeks. But the Instagram hopefully will show you the kind of community that we have, and how the alumni become almost a family. I know that sounds a bit twee, but it's true. People really do support and care for each other in this wonderful community, and that's what you'd be joining.
And actually, and it's probably worth saying that we assume that a number of you are here today because of a number of our alumni, because we know that our alumni are some of our best ambassadors for the Master of Public Policy. And so,
thank you. We've had some questions about, and this is an interesting one. Often if people, haven't been to Oxford, there is this college system, which does sometimes seem a little confusing. And so somebody has asked, what is the process of selecting a college once accepted onto the programme? And I think we can probably talk about that alongside just work-life balance. What is it like living in Oxford? How does that work, Stephanie? I'm not sure if that's something that you could answer to.
Yeah, I can definitely answer that. So when you apply, you'll have the option to select one college that you wish to apply to. Every MPP student will be a member of a college. It's worth looking through the websites for each college to see if one really resonates with you and you would like to be part of that community, but you can also do an open application, which just means that you haven't selected one. And then once you apply, if you are successful, you will be placed within a college. Honestly, they are all incredible, so you can't really go wrong. And in terms of work-life balance, the course is demanding, so it is important to get out and relax and have social activities and time with friends too. Oxford is full of opportunities. Absolutely tons. Here within the department, within your college, then within the wider university, there's plenty of societies to do with music, dance, sport, train spotting, I believe. There's an absolute ton. Obviously, you can't say yes to everything, and I would recommend you pace yourself, but it is worth getting involved in extracurricular activities, as well as obviously putting a lot of effort into your studies.
That's wonderful. Sorry,
On the
Beatrice.
colleges, sorry, I would just add, a lot of the time people are concerned that the college they select when applying will affect their likelihood of getting in. And I think that comes from how undergraduate admissions works at Oxford. For us, for the MPP, it won't have any effect. So don't worry too much about your college. Of course, as Stephanie said, do have a look because they are all incredibly different. And there's a huge range of, colleges, size, and what they offer. But it won't affect your admissions process and your likelihood of getting onto the MPP. So you don't need to worry about it too much.
Perfect. Thanks for raising that, Beatrice. Here's a question coming in about faculty, and we haven't talked too much about faculty. Obviously, they are an integral part of the course. We wouldn't be doing the course without them. Somebody has asked about faculty expertise and their involvement in research and other kind of policy projects. So how does it work with teaching and research? Because we have amazing faculty here who are obviously involved in other areas of research, writing books, papers. So Richenda, can you give us a kind of overview of how faculty works here?
Yeah, I mean, faculty are incredible. We have, I can't remember what the latest count is, but I would say 40 plus. That, and, we have people who really carefully selected. All of them at the top of their game in terms of their academic contributions, but everybody has got a focus that is so deeply applied and has a sort of a lens to their research, which is more than just the typical writing of academic papers and going to conferences. Of course, all of that happens, but our faculty are also at the heart of government decision making, and they are so often called in to provide evidence, to offer advice and steer, and so we have people who are absolute experts in the field in terms of trade policy, climate policy, thinking about issues of armed conflict and international law. We've got people who are at the forefront of thinking about economic challenges, thinking about anti-poverty programs that are effective in contexts all around the world. The list goes on. I would just say of our faculty, it's worth browsing through the website, looking at the amazing array of talents that we have there, and just to say, as a student at the school, we're actually quite a small school, like compared to some other programs. We have just 3 degree programs. We have the Master of Public Policy, which is our flagship program. It's our biggest program of about 140 students. We have our MSc, which is purposely small, and so somewhere between 6 to 10. And we have our DPhil, which is Oxford speak for a PhD, and that again has about 6 to 10 students. So it's a really small number of students in the building each year, big enough to have fantastic conversations, but small enough to make sure that you've got lots of time with faculty. And actually, of course, you will be meeting all of these faculty who are all engaged in the MPP in some way, shape or form, be it as a a lecturer on some of the core modules or some of the option papers or the applied programs. So you will have an opportunity to engage with everybody.
Perfect. Thank you so much. That's really good. And thank you for asking the question about that. Somebody has asked if during the course there is a form of internship. I guess that's our kind of summer project in a way. So Beatrice, can you give us the kind or sort of set out what the summer project is for, first of all, and then the kinds of projects that some of our students have taken place, have done placements in?
Yeah, definitely. So the MPP program is divided into 4 terms. You get 3 terms of teaching at the school, and then over the summer you go off and you do your summer project. So what that is somewhere between 8 and I believe 9 weeks, 6 to 9 weeks of going and doing an applied policy project, essentially. The range of projects that people have done has been huge. We get people in NGOs, we get people in government, we get people in more kind of private sector, and you'll be working with, you know, whatever host you go to, and then based on your work, you will write a summer project report where you talk about everything kind of that you've been doing and the work that has been taking place. To give some kind of notable examples, this year we've had a number of students at the UK Department for Culture, Media and Sport. We've had students at the World Bank, at the UN. We've got a couple of students at UNICEF and some at the World Health Organization. So a huge breadth, and obviously that's just a handful of examples, but we have 140 plus students and they each kind of go to different things. The school provides quite a lot of support in finding these, but equally students are welcome to go out and look for their own opportunities if there's something you're really passionate about. And equally, there's also students that stay at the school and work with a faculty member on more kind of desk-based work. So essentially, as long as it's to do with applied public policy, the world is your oyster and you can kind of do whatever type of project you want. In terms of internships, I'm not sure whether maybe the question hinted at working alongside the MPP. That is discouraged because of how intensive the MPP program is. But keep in mind that then over the summer, you're going to be working and doing all of this kind of applied experience. So you don't have to rush to try and do internships during the MPP. Right. You'll have all of this time to kind of put everything you've learned into practice.
Exactly. It's a wonderful opportunity to really put into practice, as Beatrice said, everything you learned throughout the year in an environment in which you have, you know, huge interest. And we actually have a lot of alumni who help us with finding summer projects because they're all working in these areas now. So it's a wonderful community. Again, another example of how the alumni help us with the summer projects. But we get such amazing feedback from students who are doing their summer projects and just loving being involved in policy in kind of real world situations, looking at real world policy challenges. So it's a great opportunity and a great thing to do in the MPP. I was going to go on to talk about what happens actually after the summer project when students are thinking about what their next steps might be and career opportunities. So Stephanie, can you talk about the kind of career advice and support that the school offers students through the year? Students who may be looking for new roles or going into a new environment of work?
Yeah, sure. There's various resources available here at Oxford. I think the summer project, we've spoken about it a lot, but it is a chance to kind of try a different area maybe. And we have got our summer project team that can't find you a placement, but they can help you and support you in choosing one and actually making it there. In addition to that, the university has its own career service, which is fantastic. You can do one-to-one sessions with a career advisor, but we also have international career fairs, which are truly amazing. And honestly, the world is your oyster. There's so many opportunities at those. In addition to that, we also have a professional skills program that runs throughout the MPP. So this is really good at kind of improving skills that you're going to need and also maybe giving you new ones if you're looking at a new role or a new area to work in. So yes, honestly, lots of resources, and we do encourage you to explore them all once you're here.
Thank you so much. What I was going to ask was about the year is quite heavy, as we talked about, just in terms of work and play. And are there any tips that you can give, Rotunda, on how students can stay on top of class requirements? We've already talked about work-life balance, and it's important to have a life with your work. But are there any tips on how they might stay on top of what's expected of them through the terms?
Yeah, I think sort of, it goes without saying that the MPP is an incredibly intense programme. It's an amazing programme and one that all of our students just love. They get so much from. But each year, without fail, we have students going, "Oh, I've got so much to do. How can I cope?" I've had some of my own students saying, "What shall I do? Tell me, how do I schedule my time?" And all we can say is, you need to learn to prioritize. You need to think about what is critical. We would absolutely always say, obviously, attend, the lectures and the seminars that you're sort of, that's on your schedule. That's the most important thing to do, as well as the reading, the key readings that are linked to all of those sort of, lectures and seminars. And in addition to the key readings, people can get overwhelmed because the Oxford reading lists are typically really long. And, they're long, not because we're trying to scare you or because, we expect you to have read each and every single thing on that reading list. You should be reading the key readings, but the reading lists are there to encompass a range of different interests and sort of, and ideas. So think hard about what your focus is and what you're trying to get from the programme itself, from the specific courses that you're doing as part of it. And I think also one of the things that students have done very successfully in previous years is set up study groups where they can kind of like come together in groups of about 6 or 7, and this can be self-organised or organised through what we have some student reps. And in those study groups, you can all sort of, divide up the reading list, and I don't mean the key readings that everybody should be reading, but the other ones, so that people can digest and distill what's happening and share it amongst their peers. So that's one way that people have sort of, got around some of that. But I think, ultimately, we sort of, we know that this is a full-on programme, but we also want you to have the time to make the most of Oxford as well. And so I think, if you are struggling, you can speak to your supervisor, you can speak to the course conveners about sort of, how to really get on top of the material, but also have enough time to attend the amazing social events that are in and around Oxford. And also, we make such an emphasis on the importance of the community that you have at the school. And it's so important to make time to socialise actually with your fellow students and to really get to know them because, the talk curriculum is really important, but the friendships, connections and network opportunities that you have really with your fellow MPP classmates are, I think, one of the most exciting things about the programme.
Just as important. And we have, this year we have 146 students, I think, from about 60 countries. So we have an incredibly diverse class. As Richenda said, it's a global classroom. And often, it's just as important to learn from your fellow students because you're learning about the challenges and issues that they have in policy areas in their countries and how they might apply solutions that you might have found from what you've been doing. So it's hugely important. And these are friendships for life, as we've discovered. And also marriages. We've had quite a few MPP marriages over the years. So it's a very friendly course. We have, I believe, about 8 or 9 minutes left. So do get more questions in the Q&A and put them in if you have any more questions. We'll go back to talking about applications because I know this is something that is coming up in the Q&A that people have more questions about their applications. And I think it would be helpful if we can just get perhaps to the 3 of you what your top tips might be for putting together a really strong application for the MPP. I'll start with Richenda.
I think for me, so we read a huge number of applications and we're really interested in getting to the sort of, the heart of who you are. So just do make clear sort of, what are the real sort of, things that motivate you? What are the policy interests that really concern you, and what have you done already in that space, and what do you want to go on to do? So I just think, make sure you get that sort of, that story and that sense of who you are across in the application, and do that through the personal statement, the written work, and all of the other materials. And don't be put off by the application. We do ask for quite a number of things, but actually it's just an opportunity for you to shine. And just, we always really enjoy reading the submissions. They're incredible. So just enjoy putting it together.
Thank you. Beatrice?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've already obviously mentioned that it might seem obvious, but follow the guidance, make sure that you've read through it all. Take your time reading through it, make sure you understand everything. If you have any questions, you can email us. Make sure you're addressing the prompts and the specific pointers that are given, specifically with the written work and with the personal statement. Just make sure that you're providing where you're asking you to provide, instead of, kind of free-forming whatever you think would be most helpful. I think as long as you follow the guidance, then odds are you're going to be able to do a really strong application.
Stephanie?
I think my last one is, it takes time to write these applications. It really does. You do have to think about what you want to say, and especially in the reflective policy, I say we need that reflective thought from you. So I would say, if you haven't started already, to get started now, and you will need an edit or two. So take your time, and you'll be absolutely fine by January.
Yes, you have time, January. We'll, I think, give you a few closing reflections before we end up. I just wanted to say as well, do look at the Q&As on the website. And what we'll do after this session now is just check that all our Q&As on the website match with all the things that you've been asking us, so that there are no question marks with respect to any of the steps in the application process. So, but the website hopefully will give you all the information you need if we haven't covered it in this session. So we'll just kind of have a chat about our closing reflections and how we think people should proceed from this point on. Hopefully this session has been super helpful for you. But Richenda, what are your sort of reflections on people applying to the MPP?
I would just say to all of you, we really want to make sure that people don't think that this is an elite programme that's beyond their reach. We work really hard to support candidates with scholarships across the board. We're not always successful, but we work really hard with people to try to make that happen. We really want to have a rich, diverse classroom that includes a huge number of voices, and we hope that our website today, any communication that you have with the school, conveys the message that we are a welcoming and warm place, and we really would love to see an application from you. We would love to answer any questions that you might have. And yes, this is not a programme that is beyond your reach. It's an amazing programme, but it's amazing because of the people who apply, people like you. So please do apply.
Thank you. That was great. Beatrice, what are your thoughts to end?
I think going back on the funding thing, don't let that be a barrier or let it scare you. As Richenda's mentioned, we do put in a lot of work. We're not always successful, but we really do try to support our offer holders and our students find funding. That being said, as I said at first, make sure that you're getting out there and looking for funding yourself as well. Whilst we would love to be able to find funding for everyone, a lot of the time you kind of have to do the work as well. Think about external scholarships. So like we mentioned, cheapening the deadlines in early November, but also, put yourself out there and reach out to anyone that you think might be able to help with this. That being said, again, don't let it put you off at this stage. You can apply now, and then once your application is done, you can start worrying about the funding and about how to actually come on course.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Yeah, I think I'd just add on to both of those. Don't let the name Oxford scare you away. We are really lovely people, and so is the cohort. So yes, don't let finances or Oxford be a barrier to you applying. And as Beatrice said, just be proactive when it comes to funding. It can be quite a daunting task, but the earlier you start, the easier it is.
Perfect, thank you. And my reflection really is, once you've gone through this process, which can seem a bit complicated, but that, we're here to help. Think about what you will be doing after the MPP and the impact that you'll be having on your communities and societies. This course is all about good governance, good government. Everybody wants to have good government, whether that's local, national, across the globe. We all have a mission here at school. That's why we're all here, is we want to see improvements in public policy so that we have fairness and equality for everybody. And that's what you'd be working towards. So there is a bigger picture. When we're thinking about how do I write my statement and what size should my CV be, there is a bigger picture here. And you've all joined this webinar because you have that mission, and that's wonderful. So we're so happy that you joined us today. This recording will be, no, it's not a recording because we're live, but the recording of it will be on our YouTube channel fairly soon. So feel free to go back and look at it. Like I said before, do look at our website if there's any further information that you need, and email us as well, admissions@bsg.ox.ac.uk, if you have any further questions that we haven't answered today. So all that's left for me is to say thank you so much for taking time out of your schedules to join us today. We hope to see your applications. And yeah, thank you so much. It's been lovely to chat to each other, but to listen to us chatting to each other. And I hope wherever you are.
Yeah. Thanks for your great questions.
Yes, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.